Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Shivansh Mishra. I'm the Communications Manager of IRMA, and I welcome you to this meeting, which we hope and sincerely hope that is more than a webinar, just another webinar for all of you. Uh, we are faced with an unprecedented crisis at the moment, and all of us are trying to grapple with different aspects of it. But more than us, it's a lot of other people uh, across our country who are grappling with the reality of this pandemic. They are doing it on a daily basis. They're suffering, and this initiative called the COVID-19 Business and Society under the IRMA webinar series is another attempt, another initiative to take a closer look at these realities and try to find solutions to the challenges that lie ahead. I welcome all of you to this lecture series, and I sincerely hope that you will take away from this more than we hope that you would. We have some very reputed speakers here with us today who have kindly graced us with their presence. We are being led by Professor Sudhir Kumar Sinha, who will be hosting the webinar. And apart from him, and I'm simply going to give a brief introduction of all our speakers, of all our esteemed speakers and guests today. My only request is that you have microphones on mute and your videos on off for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions, there is a text box, a chat box. You can put your questions there, and we will take up all these questions at the end of the webinar. If you have a specific question for a particular speaker, please mention their name as well. If not, then we'll take up accordingly. So we can. Retired years. Sri Tiwari retired from the Indian Administrative Service, where he worked for over 2 decades in social sector, including Gujarat CSR Authority. He has also managed Government of Gujarat's 3 flagship chemical companies. After superannuation, he is working with IRMA as an adjunct professor, besides acting as chairman of Shroff Foundation Trust and trustee of the Sadhguru Foundation. Welcome, sir. Next up, we have Shri Saurav Roy, who's Chief CSR for Tata Steel. He has led the corporate social responsibility efforts of Tata Steel for many years now and anchors a team of more than 600 colleagues. It works closely and constantly with communities to co-create solutions to the most underserved issues of the least vocal groups, reaching more than 1.5 million lives annually across India. He joined the Tata Group as part of the TAS, or the Tata Administrative Services, in 2007, and his vast experience spans CSR, sustainability, and corporate finance / M&A across a range of sectors. In his last segment, Saurav anchored the sustainability strategy work of the Tata Sustainability Group and worked with Tata companies to integrate social and environmental aspects within their approaches to business. Welcome, sir. We have with us Sri Binoy Acharya, who is the founder director of Unnati, which is a civil society organization that works in the areas of social inclusion, democratic local governance, social accountability, and disaster risk education reduction. He is the current chairperson of VANI, a national network of voluntary organizations. Over the past 35 years, he has been associated with movements, networks, and government forums related to ensuring rights and entitlements, decentralized governance, and disaster management. From 2010 to 14, he worked in association with the government of Gujarat to operationalize the social audit system for Manrega, covering the entire state. He also supports various civil society organizations and capacity building in the area of stakeholder participation, gender mainstreaming, participatory research, and organizational development. Welcome, sir. Our host for today is Professor Sudhir Kumar Sinha. He is a disciple of Mahatma Gandhi and a crusader of CSR Satyagraha, which is a CSR reform agenda. At IRMA, he's teaching responsible business management and corporate philanthropy, that is CSR, and rural development. He is the founder director of Center for Sustainability and Responsibility Inc. Private Limited. He is also a founder member of the Human Rights and Business Resource Group. A lead fellow, he has over 35 years of rich experience of working for companies and NGOs on CSR and sustainability projects, which includes prominent names like Tata Steel, Cipla Limited, Reliance Anand Dhirubhai Ambani Group, Moser Baer India Limited, and ArcelorMittal. Warm welcome to you, sir. I will now hand it over to Professor Sudhir Sinha.
Thank you, Shivanshi. Just a sec. Yeah. So I take the opportunity to welcome once again our eminent panelist, Sri Anand Mohan Tiwari ji, Sri Saurav ji, Saurav Roy ji, and Binoy ji. And I also welcome everyone who have joined, although virtually. I can't really see all of you, but definitely I thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is first of the series of 4 webinars, which I'm going to host on behalf of or from IRMA. As you see that the topic itself is, the topic reads rather, redefining and resettling goals of corporate philanthropy or CSR for helping India to make a fast recovery from the ravages of economic and social impact of COVID-19. So it has 3 parts of it, which is, of course, economic and social impacts of COVID-19. And recovery definitely has to happen because there are huge impacts. And we are going to limit the recovery to the businesses, and that too within businesses, corporate social responsibility. So what is the role of corporate social responsibility from businesses going to be in terms of making or helping India to recover from the impacts of COVID-19? So what I say that let us go back to January or February 2019. Let us examine what the situation were then. You see, the situation was not good. Why I'm saying, I'll tell you later. In a sense, economy was not doing or performing well, along with all the social indicators were also nosediving. And as you can see, the Niti Aayog itself has presented the report in the month of December 2019. And I simply pick up only 4 indicators, which is not going to give you a good story, in the sense poverty is going up since 2018. Poverty, mind you, that India did very well between 2006 and 2016, wherein poverty had declined to the level of 21.9%. And then thereafter till 2018, it remained static. And from 2018 onwards, as per the report of Niti Aayog, it has started declining. Similarly, hunger is also increasing since 2018. And income inequality, if you refer to the report of Oxfam, that also vindicates the report of, or rather, Niti Aayog vindicates the report of Oxfam. And the last one is unemployment is all-time high. That is the report given by NSSO. So these were the problem before COVID-19 happened or came to our country in March. Now the COVID has, the impact of COVID is going to compound the problems, many times higher, in the sense that every area of development sector or indicators are going to be impacted. Now look at the left. So you see how economy is going to do that. So Acquaint Ratings, which is RBI approved agency, has made a kind of estimation that India was losing at the rate of 32,000 crore rupees, equivalent to 4.5 billion US dollar per day during the first lockdown period of 21 days, which again has been matched close to by Barclays report, which says that India already has lost, say, 8.5 lakh crore, which is equivalent to 120 billion US dollar. So this is the impact of COVID immediately happening in just 2 months' time. And if you look at the first time, in fact, I'm using GDP degrowth all the time. In fact, we have been talking about GDP growth, but I am here saying it is GDP degrowth. So you see that GDP degrowth is hovering between 0.9 to 1.5%. I'm so sorry, actually. Yes, thank you, Shivans. So with this decline in economy, definitely we can see several kinds of impacts happening in the social sector. So another report which I can say that, which is released by ILO very recently after this COVID-19 problem came, that 400 million migrant workers working in the informal economy are going to be at risk of falling into poverty, and rightly so. So because, please note that, and also we don't have any data, clear data with regard to migrant workers. So someone says 8 crores, someone says 11 crores, someone even says 18 crores. But even if, so we go by this report of ILO, 400 millions going to falling into the poverty trap, means the poverty is estimated now to go up from 21.9% to 46%. And it can be more. Please remember that there are many people living on the line of poverty, right? Just above the poverty line. And they are called low middle income group. So they are at high risk to again slip down to the rank of, say, below poverty line. So that is what is going to happen. And so this is about poverty. Second is about unemployment. So unemployment has again been estimated, which is rising, which has risen from 8.4% in March this year to 27.11% on May 3 this year. And this report has been given by Center for Monitoring Indian Economy. So, so these migrant workers are going to remain unemployed for a longer period of time. It is highly unlikely that they are going to go back into the mainstream economy within 6 months. It can take more than 6 months. Then agriculture. Agriculture is going to face a lot of issues, because these workers, when they come back home, so they are definitely going to use agriculture as the primary source of their livelihood. But it has its own limitation. And majority of them belong to the marginal or small farmers group. And that's where, and also the risk means, my fear is that what is going to happen? The land is going to get fragmented further, and land is going to be sold by these people, so either full or part of that land. So that is going to have an impact on agriculture. Then moving on to, then these workers, migrant workers, when they come, so they are going to remain as, say, landless laborer or, say, agriculture worker. If I have to refer to, say, 2001 data, 2011 data, then in 2011, India had 144 million agriculture labor. Now, if I don't consider all 400 million migrant workers converting into agriculture labor, but 50% of that, if they get converted, then the number, absolute number, will definitely go up from 144 million to, say, around 350 million, which is more than 100% increase. And that is going to create problems in rural areas. Then hunger. So hunger among children is going to be in rise, because children who were getting food under midday meal scheme in schools, because schools have been closed for last 3 months, and that school's going to be remain closed for next 3 months at least. So 6 months, this is the period, and also they are going to remain out of the services of food they would be receiving. So what is that going to happen then? Then these children are going to join the or become malnourished, and it is equally good for the general masses, because the food insecurity problem definitely is going to roam around. Then comes education. If I refer to the data of UNESCO, which has released very recently, which says that 1.2 billion or 70% of world's farmers or students are impacted. So they are out of school or colleges or education system. Whereas in India, the number is 32 crore almost. And in this 32 crore, a huge number of youth population or students are from villages. So that's how. So if I have to summarize the entire impacts of COVID-19, then definitely I will summarize in one line that inequality is going to increase, social conflicts definitely is going to be on the high side, and injustice going to be very high. Now, about the role of corporate social responsibility, and since the topic says that redefining and resetting goals of CSR, I have kept this slide blank. I don't want to actually even get into the debate whether there were goals of CSR or not. But yes, one very pertinent question definitely I would like to ask even to all the corporates through this webinar. Does CSR as a sector have ever set goals? I don't think that CSR actually set goals which are in alignment with the goals of the country or even the local. But I just keep it blank, and I don't want to get into this. And some questions are there which again I want to skip, and I simply move on to the slide which is recovery, because recovery, we are talking about recovery. So there are two possible ways the recovery can happen. So a possible scenario for recovery of economy post-corona. So there are three scenarios. So scenario number one, it can happen. It is very optimistic scenario, V-shaped scenario with the fast recovery, but it all depends on the government, how much stimulus package government actually gives it. Now, the second scenario is somewhat optimistic with severe impact, but moderate and moderate recovery in just 2 to 3 years time. This seems, especially for recovery economy, very practical, because this much time at least India is going to take to make bounce back, especially. So this is U-shaped recovery we are guessing that to happen. But there is another scenario which is very pessimistic, and it says that it is not going to happen before 3 years. So this is about recovery economy, and we will discuss it later. But possible scenario for recovery in social indicators post-corona. Here, I'm very pessimistic in the sense this, even if the economy bounce back in 1 year time, V-shaped recovery it takes. Social indicators, especially all the social indicators, are not going to do like that. So there is not going to be V-shaped recovery, especially in the social indicators. So it is, India has, at least to my assessment, India has gone 5 years back. So it is going to take another 5 years to come back. So pre-COVID-19 situation. So this is my but amidst all these negativity or negative environment and stories, there are some good news which I want to share, that India has food grains reserve of more than, say, 90 million tons. So food insecurity definitely can be taken care of with this. Foreign exchange, we have high time, it is 470 billion, the highest so far. And there are other good news in the sense that business resilience, definitely I would say our business are very resilient, as they can definitely make efforts to make a comeback. With this, I move on to the role of CSR in recovery. So what is the role of businesses or especially? So here, I suggest only two roles. One is that in long term and in the short term. So in long term, businesses have to, I'm not saying whether businesses have to define or redefine the development goals, but whatever they have to do for a resilient society in long term, which means 5 things. So change in conditions means in 3 areas: economic conditions, social and political, and that to microeconomy. And second is change that is desirable, not that it is perceived or imposed. Change that enhances and widens opportunities for betterment. Change that reduces gaps for and secures equality and changes that secure equity and build human capability. So this is, but in short term, especially, this is my recommendation to corporates, that they have to suspend all their activities, CSR activities, which are done in the area of education. So construction of education, school building can wait. Computerization of school building or schools can wait. Construction of toilets can wait. And likewise, many activities can wait. But there are three areas where corporates under CSR must help. The area number one is agriculture. So what we have to do that, or corporates have to do through CSR, that they support marginal and small farmers to stop marginalization, and also they have to create more farmer producer organizations, so that it will definitely rebuild agriculture sector to make, say, more than 4% or 5% contribution to GDP. The second area is employment. I'm not talking employment in terms of post-graduation employment. I'm talking of employment in rural areas. So Manrega. So what corporates can do, that they can make their human resources available to work at the panchayat level or district level with the government to implement the Manrega schemes. Then revive and activate SHGs. Don't form new SHGs. There are millions of SHGs already formed. They are defunct, not functional. So they can actually do, and their members can definitely be benefiting themselves up, making income of, say, 1,000 or 2,000 rupees, and support low income generating activities. What I mean by low income generating scheme or activities means 3,000, between 3,000 to 5,000 income one can make. So this is regarding employment and health. Mind you, these workers have gone back their homes, and they are going to be and villages are now going to be highly vulnerable of COVID-19. So villages, you don't have so much of facilities. Only you have ESCs and sub-centers. So can corporate sector help these sectors? Essentially, the doctors and paramedics at least can have access to PPEs and some other basic facilities. And the last one is implementation of Ayushman Bharat scheme, because it is there, I think, so should be doing. I'm not going to do that, this thing. So I'm stopping here, and we are going to take the discussions into 5 rounds. So what I'm going to do that, so I'm going to moderate these discussions. So there are 5 rounds. Round number 1, I'm going to put across questions to all our eminent panelists and speakers. And so round number 1 is on the impact of COVID. Round number 2 is on recovery of the economy, that has a positive impact on the recovery of social losses. And third is on corporate philanthropy or CSR and its capability in the present form to handle complex and compounded issues of national importance. And round number 4, the questions are framed on what the government should do to enable companies to feel encouraged and go beyond legal compliances and commitments. And round number 5, there is one question which I'm going to ask to all our 3 panelists today. So with this, I stop and I enter into the first round, and my question goes to Mr. A.N. Tiwari. And I'm simply, so you can read this question, but again, I repeat, which sectors of the economy are going to bear a bigger impact? And second question appended to this, which sectors will be strengthened post-COVID? So over to you, Tiwari sir.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. Can we show the slides also? Slide number 1, which I had sent. See, if you look at, I was very closely watching the news reports that what is happening, and some very good surprises came out of whatever has happened so far. The best is the digital products. Now work from home will require a lot of new equipments at homes. Gig economy will actually bounce now, employee less and payment as per task. E-learning will be another area which has actually picked up very well and in a very impressive manner. E-retail will be another area, whether we like or not, e-retail is they're going to stay. Then drones were used in a very innovative manner by government on one side to enforce lockdown and by others to violate the lockdowns in a very innovative manner. Then alternate medicine will also come up, very nicely. Spiritual science, surprisingly, that is going to pick up. Healthcare is obvious, pharma, etc. Insurance is obvious. Data sciences are obvious. Then the government of India took advantage of this situation and started rolling down the agriculture-based reforms. That is one area where which is not actually linked with the COVID-19 impact, but with the various reforms which are going up. Then import substitution will be another thing where what our PM is talking about. So, but if you look at their potential to fund the CSR efforts, a large number of companies will be new and growing companies, which will not be contributing too much right now to the CSR. Maybe we have to wait. Now, if we look at the companies which are going to be impacted for a few years, are our traditional activities like travel, hospitality, entertainment, restaurant, automobiles, transport, air travel, luxury products, sports. We know the list. Services in general, manufacturing. Now, their profitability will be impacted for at least coming years. So now there'll be a double load on the CSR. Yeah, next slide. Can we go to the third slide now? Now there'll be double load on the CSR. One, the profitability is the third one after this. Second, third. Yeah. So one is that there will be impact on profitability. Second, there will be a lot of demand for from CSR now. Now, another thing which we should take into account is the economic packages, which is now trying to push the rural employment, MSMEs, cottage and micro a little bit. Startups also, there is some lip service for them. Fillip to agriculture, marketing and logistics, that's a big plus. There is some slight focus on migrants, but that is there. Then labor intensive units. Large industries are not really supported much in this package, and I believe they can manage without any package. Now, many of these activities will require a lot of support. Now, there is one potential area for CSR to come up with innovative solutions to support them. But during course of discussions, I'll be also building up a case that CSR rules have to be rewritten if Government of India wants some, meaningful outcomes from the corporates. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think for the last thing that what you said, definitely we are going to discuss further what the government role and roles should be and what government should be doing in order to encourage. So we'll join you, later on this particular question. So now I move on to Saurav Roy, and my question to him is, with COVID-19, the trends would be changing in all the spheres of business and society. What do you think would be those changes in terms of general and specific? And the second question related to this is, what is going to be the likely impact of COVID-19 on CSR funding in the country? Over to you, Saurabh.
Yes, so good afternoon, Sudhir. Thank you for the lovely and quite detailed presentations to Mr. Tiwari. See, right at the outset, I want to say that whatever I'm going to say here now, my learnings from this whole COVID-19 crisis, which has manifested in the last about 50-55 days, comes from the contribution that my own teams and many other individuals across the country and organizations, large, small, have helped in us reaching almost 5.5 lakh people in the last about 50-51 days, purely through our COVID response program. So I'm just going to narrate in terms of impacts and changes, what we've heard from this entire outreach program. So I think right at the beginning, we said that I think what we are facing right now is unprecedented in living memory, both from a health and a medical perspective, and also from the kind of inequities it is perpetuating. So, but what I'm experiencing is possibly I'll try and put it in three parts. One is there are huge deficits that are being created now. Okay, so the first one, of course, you begin by awareness or information deficits. I think right at the beginning, I think there was a huge amount of uncertainty that we faced across the board, across communities, across our own teams, in my own head, if you will. So that deficit has now gradually been, possibly replaced by over information. But that was a huge deficit that came up. That is defining what we do and what we are facing. Second is, of course, material deficits. Which manifests itself in hunger, which manifests itself in many other inequities, and a very underappreciated deficit of well-being. I think there's a huge amount of stress, uncertainty, tension in the system that's being built up. I think it doesn't matter whether CSR is acting on it or whether businesses are acting on it or whether civil society is acting on it. I think it's very important for everyone to look at this last deficit and see what's being done, because everything that we want to do now or going forward later is going to be a function of this deficit of well-being. Whether it's intellectual well-being or whether it's physical well-being. So that's one. But for us, I think what we've seen is this entire COVID-19 experience has challenged many popular notions. Pehla notion jo hai, which I think it has compelled everyone to question is your ability to understand what vulnerability is. हमने एक छोटा सा assessment study किया था as part of our planning process for this decade. We spoke to about 1,100 people across India, communities, and just asked them, what does this decade look like? तो एक बड़ी जोर की आवाज आई थी कि I think there was apprehension of newer and newer forms of vulnerability coming in. And as luck would have it, just the first 50 days of this financial year has played out like never before. And I think personally, as people who are working in development, I think it is on a daily basis challenging our ability to reach the last man in the line, last woman, last man, last child in the line. So ये जितने भी popular notions थे, ये भी challenge हो गए हैं. So I think there's a need to recalibrate our own understanding of who's vulnerable and what are these newer forms of vulnerability that are coming in. दूसरा जैसा मैं कह रहा था, I think I am sensing a lot of noise in the system. Everyone has a view, everyone has an opinion, on what needs to be done. So I think just maintaining focus. You mentioned short-term and long-term goals. Maintaining focus, evaluating your current work and your future plans, not in a sense of chaos and white noise, but just in a sense of correctness, I think is going to be a major challenge. Third, तीसरा, जो हमारा notion of leadership in grassroots institutions है, पंचायती राज institutions कैसे काम कर रहे हैं, हमारे जो सरपंच cohorts है, they have gone through a massive upheaval. क्योंकि जहां हम काम कर रहे हैं, हमारे they have been asked to take decisions on a daily basis, sometimes with often zero information, sometimes with misinformation. हमारे बहुत सारे पंचायत leaders today are very scared of being exposed, not because of their own inadequacies, but because of as I said, lack of information. एक पूरा नया ही हम लोग तो इंटरनेट देख के समझ जाते हैं, पर उस इंफॉर्मेशन को पर्कोलेट करने में बहुत टाइम लगता है. तो ये जो हमारे इंस्टीट्यूशन का अंडरस्टैंडिंग है और लीडरशिप का अंडरस्टैंडिंग, ग्रासरूट्स लीडरशिप का अंडरस्टैंडिंग है, आई थिंक दैट इज समथिंग दैट हैज टू अगेन आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू से इट्स गोइंग टू बी रिकैलिब्रेटेड, क्योंकि इसका अंडरस्टैंडिंग है, बट आई थिंक इट्स इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर अस टू रिविजिट द बेसिक्स with which we started working with PRI institutions, क्योंकि that's the fundamental. PRI institutions, हमारी सहिया या आशा दीदियां या जो आंगनवाड़ी सेविकाएं हैं, ये जो कोहॉर्ट है, इनको दोबारा से समझना और to not look at them as a cohort but look at them as individuals in specific roles, I think is going to be a huge thing. It's COVID has taught us that. Or Chautha, I'm saying this, I think, because if we are seeing so much inequity, a huge challenge that seems to come up is for all of us to just reflect, sit back, and rediscover what our moral center is. Why did we come into this space of development, and what is it that we want to do? So this goes back to the point that I was making on white noise. But I think a lot of the development practitioners, whether it's in CSR, whether it's in government, whether it's in civil society, need to go back and ask themselves why they are here. क्योंकि इतने crunches होने वाले हैं अभी, funding crunches, collaboration crunches, multiple things. Unless you're in this space for the right reason, then this space is going to become very, very difficult and thankless. So that's the second piece. And again, as I said, I think you were saying there's some outstanding positives that we've seen, some superb stories. But the biggest thing is, I think this COVID-19 phenomena, for some things which we had been trying to do for some time, has cleaned up the slate like never before. अगर आप डिजिटल का ही ले लीजिए, मान लिया कि शायद 10 या 14% बच्चों तक ही आज डिजिटल इंटरवेंशन पहुंच सकते हैं, मान लिया, पर एटलीस्ट आज हम एक ऐसे कगार पे हैं जहां पे कोई ऑप्शन नहीं है. So there is, so it's the cleanest slate we've had for innovation for a long while. I think that's a huge positive. My answer on CSR funding, the availability of CSR funds, actually at a level, the answer is quite binary. If you yourself showed the, kind of challenges that businesses are going to face. Apart from a few sectors, which would be the network sectors, the IT space, which I think will have consistency in business, if not enhancements. I think all of us, everyone else is going to face a funding crunch. And I'm sure there'll be some follow-up questions where I can expand on this bit.
Sure. So thank you, Saurabh. Now we move on to Sri Binoy Acharya ji. So Binoy ji, मेरा सवाल आपसे है, what in your assessment are the underlying social impacts of COVID-19? I repeat it, underlying social impacts of COVID-19, other than painful reverse migration, poverty, food insecurity, and unemployment, which we all know. So what are these underlying social impacts of COVID-19, which have not been captured, yet they are very critical for sustainable and resilient communities?
Thanks, Sudhirji. You have already made presentation with regard to poverty, insecurity, unemployment, so I'm not going to touch about that. This unprecedented disruption has basically, first thing is, exposed our limitations of public healthcare system. In fact, last 59 days, we are busy in procuring ventilators, PPEs, medical masks, and fighting to create new beds for COVID patients. So that's the limitation of our healthcare system. A week back, actually, Dr. David Nabarro, who is the WHO Special Envoy on COVID-19, and also Dr. Bikram Patel, who is a Harvard Medical School professor, as well as Dr. K. Srinath Reddy, who is right now the President of Public Health Foundation of India. All these are eminent people, and they have said what Saurabh was exactly mentioning, that till now, so far, India has done well. But however, the next phase would be the preparedness, what also you are mentioning, about our lower level of healthcare system, our village level, our PHC level, public healthcare system, and also our local government. Because this virus is going to enter the villages. So finally, if we need to live with this virus, we need to finally strengthen our public healthcare system at the ground level, also our local governance system, what Saurabh was mentioning about panchayats. Without involvement of these two, we will not be able to move ahead. So perhaps the time has come to strengthen decentralized governance. And that's the only way we'll move ahead. The second kind of underlying social impact is, which some reports are coming out from the field level, that is increasing mental health issues, because there's so much of disruption, and you can see the suicides are happening, and there is no such support available right now. So second was the increasing medical health. The third one is, the gender-based violence. After every disaster, the women and girls are adversely impacted, and that is primarily because of the socio-cultural system we have. We can see that there is an increasing number of unintended pregnancies. There are more reduced access to healthcare systems. So second one is domestic violence. And fourth one, I'm a sociologist. If you understand Durkheim, Emile Durkheim, a social anomaly is getting created. A social disease is getting created, which Saurabh very well mentioned. And we need to fight this social enemy. It's not only COVID we have to fight. We have to fight many other issues. Take, for example, the amount of fear which has been created, the amount of a stigma which has been created. I was talking to Tiwari other day. We suddenly said that all the vendors are super spreaders. We didn't check them for 50 days. On 51st day, we wake up suddenly and they're super spreaders. And we created a stigma against our vendors. Every day we buy our vegetables. And we said that how to fight the stigma. You create the stigma and then fight the stigma. We have created a fear. In fact, most of our politicians, including doctors' community, they say that it's a virus which kills. It's a deadly virus. As if we are going to fall dead every day. This is not. We have created misinformation in the world. As a consequence, we have to fight these social enemies, social anomalies. So the point is, COVID-19 has unfolded so many social impacts. So you can go on talking throughout it. Thank you.
I absolutely agree with you. I think these are the impacts which we have discussed, and also my presentation also brought some of the facts and that added by you guys. I think so. Let us move on to recovery things. So again, second round. The first question to Sri Tiwari Saab. The question is that we have huge amount of challenges in front of us. So in the backdrop of huge challenges for the government to make a fast recovery, perhaps the V-separate recovery, I would say that. So what are those 5 to 6 topmost prioritized or critical areas of development that the government would want corporates to do under CSR, which ultimately help the country meet its social and economic goals in the shortest possible time of 1 to 2 years?
Okay, thank you. I'll first try to list out what we learned from COVID. Sudhir Sinha ji, Saurabh bhai, and Vinod ji had talked about. I'll just add few other things. I think we are missing out the urban area. If we look at when we talk about poor and disadvantaged, then I would also like to include unorganized workers, old and infirm people, special children especially. Nobody's talking about them. Women, self-employed people, like I'm not talking about big self-employed people, but street vendors, footpath shops, hawkers. These are the people who have been very badly affected. So I'll building on this also. Then job markets are badly impacted. Then people's priorities will change and a lot of expenses will be dropped now at least for the coming few years. So based on this, if we look at what government or society should try to plan in the reconstruction phase, I will call it. So first thing is that whether our curve will be U, V, W or L will depend on US, China and European Union. If they recover fast, we'll also recover fast. Our say today India cannot ignore the recovery in these countries. We are completely interlinked. Second thing is that I was also trying to watch the GDP growth rate predictions. For India, it started with 4% plus, and today it is in negative. So where it will land, we don't know. And my gut feeling is that it will become further negative and might reach double digit also. So with this, within this, say, context, can we start, if we start looking at, first is that, which Vinodji and Saurabhji have already raised, that better readiness. Specialized hospitals will be required, testing and certification. That this is one area which we are missing out. I will not dare to go to a cinema hall or to a restaurant unless somebody, some impartial agency certifies that it is sanitized regularly. And today also it was sanitized. So whether CSR or even the civil society can develop some mechanism to ensure, give a, see, today even traveling by air, I'll be quite alarmed unless I clean up my seat myself. So there can be some new type of comfort level or confidence building exercise has to be started. Then another thing is these migrants who are doing industrial working in industries, and they were, whether they were unskilled, but they had acquired a lot of skill by observing and watching, whether they can be trained back home and gainfully employed above minimum wages. That could be another area where we have to actually think of. Then at least no state government, neither the host or the the home state, had any idea of their migrants. Who are migrants? Where are they? Who has gone? Who are left out? Nobody knows. Now there is a need to develop a proper database of migrants, and that will be maybe along with the census exercise that has to be done, and then migrants, maybe there could be slightly better focus on these people. Now, some of the other areas for say society will be employment creation both in rural and urban areas. That this is one thing where, and we cannot, I'll come to that, we cannot follow the conventional method. We have to think a lot of out of box. Now in agriculture, a lot of reforms are being planned, but they cannot come to realization unless say there a very robust agri marketing or agriculture value chain is created with the private participation. अभी उस पे कोई बात नहीं हो रही है. Then maybe some more urban centric activities like hand holding of micro enterprises, like I talked about these footpath, say shops and say sabji wala, karyana ki dukan. They require a lot of hand holding. Another one positive aspect which I talked earlier with is the e-learning. If which was given, say this COVID was given as a lockdown was given as a surprise to us, and if by using e-learning technology we have reached 15 to 20% of the say students, if we do a better planning and try to say reduce the workload on the schools or load in the schools, there will be a lot of benefits. Telemedicines will be another thing. Startups who are going to create a lot of employment. Those things we have to start thinking about. Then if we talk about e-learning, there will be a lot of skill training can be imparted now through e-learning, a lot of on-the-job training. I believe now we have to think about even IRMA, maybe campus-based on-the-job training will be now thing of past. We have to start thinking about the on-the-job training. Then startups, CSR is funds can be used, but provided it is in the university system. They have not given very good results so far. Can government NCA think about permitting corporates to directly support the startup? So these were some of the areas where I think there will have to be new focus, and this will create a lot of changes on the way CSR was being implemented so far. Even the implementing agencies will change. This we'll discuss later on. Thank you.
Sure, sir. So now we move on to the next question to Saurav Ji. As all of us know that Tata Steel manages operations from challenging states like Jharkhand, Orissa, and Chhattisgarh. which are mostly tribal dominated areas and that are economically backward and are also at high risk of facing impacts of COVID-19, which already in fact you have said. So what role are you, when I say you means CSR of the company, playing or going to play in mitigating these impacts and also in helping the immediate society to make a fast recovery from the consequences of COVID-19? And another question, small question, what are the challenges and how are you planning to overcome those challenges? My challenge is that, sir, you have to answer in 3 minutes time, Saurabh. Thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, so Surya, I'll just be short maybe in the interest of time. Okay, 5 points to this, okay? First is, I think, Jinjin, wherever we are located, as I said right at the beginning, I think so there is an immediate response to what we are going through, and then there's as you said, a recovery phase, right? So the immediate response, I think, in each district where, say, Tata Steel is present and we have our hospitals are the designated COVID-19 hospitals.
Well done.
So we are working with the government, okay? So, which includes, all our doctors, for instance, actually raising their hands and saying that, listen, we will brave the odds and we will be at the front lines and fight this. And also now, as you know, East India is gradually changing color from green to orange to red. And there are more and more cases that are coming in. So that's as far as, the medical aspect of that is concerned. And then there's a fairly robust and large program that we're doing on, as I said, addressing the deficits and on ration, food distribution, wellness, etc. So that's one. But I think but this will end. This will end if not, in another 15 days or maybe 2 months, 3 months, and then we have to transition to a longer term thing, right? So here's what I postulate, right? First, it's important to remember that at least in our case, I think we have a certain vision and we have certain promises that we've made to our communities, and then we are on a sort of long-term development path with them. And it's important to remember that in a year, एक ऐसे समय में जहाँ पे duress has gone up so much, it's important to remember that we recalibrating or lowering our ambition cannot be the first option that we have. Despite maybe funds crunches or whatever. So it's the onus on us to be innovative. We can't, on a year when the communities are in duress, we can't suddenly go out and say कि नहीं थोड़ा बाबा इस साल कम काम करते हैं, नहीं हो पाएगा. That's not the starting point. So for example, if we work in about 4,000 schools and all our children who are out there, we are working very hard with our partners to make sure that the learning curve remains intact. 14% बच्चों के पास सेल फोन है, ये हमारे एक्चुअल नंबर्स है असेसमेंट के. 11% उससे व्हाट्सएप एक्सेस करते हैं. छोटी बच्चियों को तो सेलफोन का एक्सेस और भी कम मिलता है बच्चों से, ठीक है, पर ये सच्चाइयां हैं. बट you sort of plow through them. The question then for a long-term program is how do we alter these realities? That is what comes in. The third piece is, now that we are looking at our way forward, the way we are looking at this is this whole COVID-19 phenomena. I think we are reasonably clear कि ये एक नया factor नहीं है. This is not a new factor that has to be included in strategies. This is now the operating context. जिसको हम लोग that term new normal जो आता रहता है.
Yes.
So we are looking at all our work that we are doing and sort of trying to map it against what are the new prioritized based on imagine a 2x2 matrix where you're looking at what are the newer needs that are coming out on one hand, and which are the populations which are, say, a little more vulnerable than before now, and then re-looking at all our programs on this 2x2 matrix, and depending on what quadrant it is, taking a decision on this thing. So that's, if you are asking me what the management tool is, then that's the management tool that we're using for the development. Fourth, this is something that we have believed a lot in, and I think it's going to become more and more important, and possibly a way to bridge this shortage of resources and the need to do more, is how do you amplify our work. बहुत जरूरी है कि हम लोग जितना इन्वेस्ट चेंज में कर रहे थे, अगर उतना इन्वेस्ट चेंज मेकर्स में करें. because I've seen outstanding people doing outstanding work. I think it's important to relook at the value of investing in change makers. They could be institutions, they could be individuals, but it needs a leap of faith. And we are in a position, we've taken that leap of faith, and everyone should be willing to now take that leap of faith. And the last piece, I think I've been seeing a few questions and I'm seeing a few, sensing stuff. I think, to remember that often we get what we wish for, so it's important for everyone to also ask themselves the question that, are you looking at CSR as a transactional development solution, or are you looking at CSR as long-term development partners? If you see a role, if you look at CSR as pots of money, if you look at CSR as hamara sanitization kara do, hamara ye kara do, then trust me, that is what you will get. Okay, jitna bhi aap complain kare. So hum log aisa nahi karte hain, but I can assure you that there are many businesses also who are struggling to do something long term, but the demands are just so myopic and short term that they don't know what to do. So I'm sorry if that's a little contrarian, but that's the truth. You will get what you seek for, and it's important for everyone to understand that. So
yeah, you said that.
That's it.
Yeah. So Saurabh, you said that two things. In fact, you said that a change makers definitely is going to make a difference in our sector. And second is that transactionality of CSR is not going to really help CSR contribute to the development the way, in fact, we have expected from. So I think I agree with you completely. And as you know that, and also I in particular running a campaign against transactional philanthropy, and I say that CSR has to be transformational. So thank you very much for your views. And I move on to the next question to Sri Binoyji. So Binoyji, we are talking about some macroeconomy. Definitely, macroeconomy is going to make a bounce back, maybe in a year or two. But it is highly unlikely, as I said, that micro or rural economy and social indicators will make any kind of V-shaped recovery very soon, within 1 year or even 2 years, right? U-shaped. So it is estimated that it will take at least 3 to 5 years. It is, again, my estimation, which I'm saying, to get back on the track. So what strategy do you think the development or NGO sector should plan? I'm again repeating, so your question is limited to, or keeping your views limited to NGO sector or development sector. So what they should plan and adopt strategy in terms of to accelerate the recovery goals to be achieved in not more than 2 years. Over to you.
Yeah, so there is my reports which are coming from the field. One thing is coming out very clearly, that the farmers require credit requirements. Where right now they don't have any cash, because people who have been sending the money, they are not sending, they are not earning for the last 2 months. So what is required for the Kharif crop? Kharif is going to come just now. They have to borrow tractors, they have to need money for fertilizers, for seeds. So they require credit needs. And these credits are not available. That's number one. That's immediate requirement. In fact, every day I'm getting this report. Second one is access to agricultural implements. In fact, even in MG and REGA, because same implement cannot be used by multiple people. So there is a dearth of agricultural implements. So every work sites, we need to provide multiple sets of agricultural implements so that the same instrument is not used by multiple people. The third one is little medium term, but not immediate. No one knew earlier what is the number of migrant workers in our country, informal sector workers. In fact, I was looking at the literature. Every literature says it starts with no one knows what is the number. So studies are mostly micro studies. Right now, the time has, since we now broadly know the number, perhaps we need to set up a social security system. And to start with on a short term, even one need to give money in the pocket of these migrant workers who are part of this family. If there's no money, they cannot even do anything in wherever they are right now. So it can be direct money transfer. Basic income can be created. In fact, I was thinking that government will be more generous and at least give a substantial amount of money to people. But if NGOs are providing, now food and relief is gone. So immediate requirement is keep some cash in the pocket. That's the immediate requirement. Besides that, health requirements is very huge. So what Saurabhji was mentioning earlier, we need to support the local healthcare systems, because our ASA and ANMs and even medical officers, they are overwhelmed right now. They don't know which direction to go. So provide some support. Many people may not even require, may even require transport support. They might require support for medicines. So people don't have money right now. So without that, they will be doing distress sale. They will be lose their assets. So point is, immediately the rural economy requires some infusion of money that should directly go to the farmers, to landless, to those kind of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinayji. So now I move on to the third round, which is on CSR and its capability. So Pradeep Kumar, one of the participant, also has raised the question that CSR, with CSR we are making huge expectations, which I absolutely agree with Pradeep Kumarji that you have made your remarks. Yet CSR can make significant contribution to the country's development. So with regard to that, and also we are asking, now I'm going to ask this question number 7 to Sri Tiwari sir. So question for you, sir, is that are the prevailing corporate philanthropy, means CSR strategies and approaches, good or adequate enough to address the issues and challenges of economic and social impacts that already have appeared or will emerge further after the corona pandemic gets over?
Let us look at what is happening right now in CSR sphere. And Dr. Sinha, I agree completely with you that it was not actually very exciting. But luckily, the central PSUs were doing much better job. They started following some system, whether it was right or wrong, and they were spending more than eligible funds. And aspirational districts, there were also a large number of major PSUs are focusing on that. And other big spenders from the sectors like banks, telecom, oil companies, they were also improving quite a lot. But if you look at overall scenario, if you look at the strategy on CSR of any company, I can tell you, and I have in some forum I have also mentioned that they are replica of each other. There is no difference. Everybody is somebody prepared some very complicated document, and every other company followed that. Can we go to the next slide? There were not many replicable interventions, and there was very low emphasis on outcomes, or even the risks were not properly managed, and they were mainly supported very low technology interventions and copied from the government. And the one reason was that this was the projects were designed by somebody else, and within their say whatever they were doing, that was being supported by CSR companies under their CSR. Now, a bad situation requires a bad situation requires a very bold solution. If you look at the London plague of 1860, it gave the world's first underground drainage system to the city, and then it became norm for every other city. So can we start thinking about some out-of-box ideas like education, health, and livelihood? They will remain the focus, but the approach will change. Now the focus can be on e-learning, which is a major opportunity which should not be missed. There will be focus on improving the rural logistics, improving the rural enterprises. In fact, I will talk about rural enterprises slightly in detail. Shroff Foundation, where I'm involved, runs a fantastic vocational training center where the focus is to make them employable. But at the same time, they run a very small program also, which say promotes the entrepreneurship in rural area. One boy who was trained as tribal boy, who was trained as electrician, is now having a team of 16 people besides him. And that means one boy has created employment for 16 more people. Now, this kind of, why government or companies or say implementing agencies take the responsibility for removing or reducing the poverty in the rural area? Why not create entrepreneurs who create employment in the rural areas directly? Similarly, we tried with the tissue culture entrepreneurs. In fact, I'm talking since last 2 years to create drone entrepreneurs in the rural area. Agriculture implements, Banerjee talked about. Can some entrepreneurs be created for that? Agri-retailing will be another, area where some features of the e-retailing can be taken up. Similarly, the migrants who have returned to their places, can they be converted into small-time contractors? Somebody might be good in electrical things, somebody might be good in civil works. In fact, construction sector of Gujarat is completely impacted because everybody has left. Now, these people, wherever they have gone, can they retain their team and become contractors? Somebody has to support them and guide them, train them, a lot of things. So what I'm trying to tell that, can we think out of box and try to find a solution rather than talking and like this. Another thing is that I was reading the recent book by this our Nobel laureate. I'm forgetting the name. Abhijit Banerjee.
Abhijit Banerjee. Yeah.
Now, what the theory which he has told that if you have less disposable income, then you will be focusing on very high performance projects which will be giving very high return. So can we take the shrinkage of CSR funds as a blessing, and we focus on very high return, very high outcome projects in that manner? That means the projects now have to be designed by the companies themselves, by taking some expert suggestion. They have to now select the IA. Now, traditional implementing agencies may not be very useful right now. They have to develop and support the implementing agencies. Low cost IT based review and monitoring tools will have to be developed. Then projects should have some flexibility to achieve the outcomes. Risk management will be another area where they have to focus now. Impact assessment, documentation, which will help in replication. And then they have to have very good networking with the government so that they are scaled up at the bigger level. So these are some of the suggestions which I feel that we should, if we do, the CSR funding, even if it is small, it can actually do wonders. If we start thinking, it is not a government tied money where we can spend money only for NREGA or X or Y schemes. It is completely flexible and we should treat it like that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. One request to all of you that so we have to finish this webinar by 5:30. So I would request you to give your responses very quickly, swiftly, so that we can also accommodate some questions from audiences. So now, Saurabh, actually this question has been asked not by me. In fact, it has been put out by Varun Kokar. He happened to be a very brilliant student of IRMA. He has just passed out. So he wants to know from you, what in your assessment should be the essential skills for CSR professionals that they will need to develop in a post-COVID-19 world? I think that this is a very, very important and critical question that also you belonging to a corporate sector definitely can help us understand what this could be. Over to you.
So that's a good question indeed, but in the interest of time, 5 quick points.
Yeah.
I think there are 5 skill sets, broad skill sets. The first 3 are relevant whether you're in CSR or you're in an NGO. Okay, and the last 2 are relevant particularly for CSR professionals. First, I think the hugely underrated ability to engage with people in the community as equals and with warmth. Okay, that is can't be compromised, and it's not that easily available. Okay, anywhere you go. One. Second is, the ability to collaborate but not compete. Arey, uska impact mil gaya, mera impact nahi ho raha hai, ye wo, let these petty things not come in the way.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have money this year, you have to compete. You have to collaborate. So, so that's a skill set. Collaboration, fundraising, these are skill sets which are underrated. Second. Third, a little more comfort with ambiguity. Not all results are going to come overnight. now even less so. But also a skill set for the organization, and as I said, I think this is for an NGO as well as CSR organizations, I guess, is to design organizational systems, and that's a huge challenge that we have. Design appraisal systems, design incentive systems that actually incentivize this ambiguity, dealing with this ambiguity. Because most appraisal systems and most organizational design is incentivizes immediate results, but that's not how development works. So fourth, now we come into domains which I think are a little more CSR specific. And I agree with what Mr. Tiwari was saying. I think it's time that we develop specialists in niche areas, because there are new niche areas that are going to come up. Okay, so the age-old problem of having civil engineers with social skills, or the ability to sit with the community and co-design something, use local material. Public health specialists, not in the conventional understanding of doctors, medicines, but public health specialists. This whole digital piece, बहुत digital पे बात होती है, पर community को भी सुनता नहीं है. The ability to engage with communities and design what is digital, what is technology. And the final one, which I just want to share with someone and this with everyone here, a very big problem in the CSR domain is that individuals who are in CSR organization need to have the ability to speak two languages: the language of communities and the language of development, and the language of corporate speak. You should have the ability to sit with the communities, understand what they're saying, design something, and communicate it back to approval authorities, etc., in a language that is relevant and understandable for them. And most of the transition or translation loss in CSR happens because of the inability to do this. And COVID-19 is going to seriously accentuate the requirement for this to happen. So these are my 5 points.
Excellent points. I think so. The last one, what you said, is really very important one, and definitely we have to think over this thing. So now, quickly moving to Vinodji, I'm again asking you questions from the perspective of NGOs. So will CSR implementing agency means NGO be able to retain the pre-COVID status for corporate partnerships under a new regime of COVID-19? What problems are they going to face, and will it have an impact on CSR? If yes, then what are your suggestions for the businesses to do?
So I was interacting with one of the faculty member in Ashoka University, who they are part of the philanthropic unit of Ashoka University, and they did a small study. I'm just referring to the study. The study says that the CSRs are going to retain their long-term partners, but they may not able to take up new agreements. New projects may not come up. So that's the overall assessment in one liner. But they were saying that a lot of, as everybody is saying, a lot of work will happen in education sector, what Tiwari ji is saying. Take, for example, right now our government schools, though the quality of education is poor, there is no online learning. Maximum now the government is doing a WhatsApp-based learning. So perhaps in the coming days, as Saurabh also mentioned, we may not, you also mentioned, we may not open schools, but invest in tablets and develop new educational packages and make it available. That's the big requirement coming up, and CSR are going to support that. Second one is, as everybody is saying, livelihood support. In fact, now we have 40 institutions working in collaboration. Everyone is saying that CSR needs to support for the livelihood support. So these are two broad needs, education and livelihood, that will come up. But definitely new projects will not come up. That's the overall assessment.
Okay, thank you, Vinodji. I think what I'm going to do that, and also in paucity of time, and also I'm going to merge the questions of round number 4 and 5, and quickly asking all three of you. The round number 4 was on what the role, what the government should do to enable companies to feel encouraged and go beyond legal compliances commitments, and round number 5 on the need for changing goals for CSR, because this particular webinar is on the goals for CSR, or the need for changing goals for CSR. So I would request all three of you to respond to this question, that what are the likely new goals for CSR with reduced CSR funds, which is all likely to happen, and even Viplav from PwC has raised this issue that CSR funds are going to be reduced because of because companies have given away their maximum funds to PM CARES fund. So with the reduced CSR funds, ideally, what type of initiatives can be supported by corporates that remain aligned with the changing goals? So this is the question I'm asking to all three of you. Please, Tiwari sir, you can start.
Okay, thank you. I see, Sinha Sahab, I do not perceive that reduced funds will be a problem. In last 35 years in the government, I never found shortage of money. I think there was more shortage of ideas. Right now, what we were doing with this money was replacing the government work and taking over that. And school room government को बनाना है, हम बना दे रहे हैं. वो computer government को लगाना है, हम लगा दे रहे हैं. So in fact, my bigger problem is the MCA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, which has started treating CSR money as if it is the government money, and started preparing prescriptions for everything. And now ground level realities have not been resolved. The root causes of round tripping of the money, local pressures, lack of outcomes, lack of innovations, they have not been addressed in the current draft. In fact, this is the right time to start. In fact, corporates should start developing their own approach and pressurizing the MCA that before finalizing the rules, they should rewrite everything in the context of COVID-19. That could be one thing. Now, the minute you look into this thing, can there be new instruments for CSR support? Why cannot start? Why companies cannot pay, say, contribute to equity of the rural startups? For me, it will be it can create much more employment than whatever we are doing right now so far in the CSR sphere. Or another thing is that can we create social impact funds by using CSR money? Why we cannot have back-ended outcome-based reimbursements to the implementing agencies? Or why there cannot be a three-way, say, CSR private public partnerships projects? Right now we are restrained by the MCA for doing these things. The minute MCA starts permitting innovations, at least even if half of the money is round-tripped and wasted, but remaining half of the money will give some beautiful models for the country, and which can be, say, replicated or scaled up. So I think that if corporates are using this money for innovation, there is a lot of money available. We should not worry about whatever has been gone and how much is left out. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Saurav. The same question to Saurav.
Thanks, Sudhir. But Mr. Tiwari has said most of what I wanted to say. So as I said, I think just prioritize basis the new needs and the new vulnerabilities that are coming up. Don't deviate from promises that you may have made. If you have a well thought out, well articulated vision strategies, don't jump ship suddenly. Look at what can be done. You've been part of sessions before, Sudhir, where I've actually said that Schedule 7, is actually not restrictive. There is nothing that restricts. It is more a floor regulation rather than a ceiling regulation, and it has to be seen at that like that. The only thing is, as we move forward, I think as policy evolves, it is important for policy articulators to remember whether two things, in my view. One, whether you're designing, the difference between designing policy to discourage, who shall define the CSR policy? The people who are doing good work within CSR, or the people who are, say, doing suboptimal work within CSR? Are you going to design national policy to discourage non-conformation, or are you going to design national policy to encourage, positive outcomes like Tiwari was saying? So that's the mool question from policy building piece. And I think for some companies also, I think it's, there's this whole thing around CSR which talks of proximity, neighboring areas, right? I think my last point is somehow this COVID phenomena may push companies to reflect on the difference between neighborhoods and neighbors. You know, everyone who's coming back to East Singhbum district are my neighbors and should be my responsibility.
I think you said it very
and nowhere in regulation does it say that you have to invest in your neighborhood within 10 kilometers in the CSR regulation, right?
Yes.
So let's start drawing the distinction between neighborhood and neighbors. So that's my last point. So thank you, Sri. Thanks.
Yeah. And Binoyji, your views?
Yeah, quickly, corporates are known for their strategic thinking. This time has come. I hope they will look at CSR in a strategic way. Number two, what Saurabh has already mentioned, the rule is cooperate, and collaborate. Because without collaboration, you cannot do anything. If someone is making a software for 5th class education program, you should not do that. You do for something else. So collaborate. That's the only thing. Third one is, government is there to support the welfare of the poor. So don't invest in physical structures, what you mentioned. Improve in making people access those programs. But today, 50% of our programs reach the last mile. If the corporate sector strategically look into that and see that how government programs, all government programs, education, health, social security, how that can reach the last mile, they invest about that process, then I think this is the time we'll win. Thank you.
Thank you. One question has come from one of our students, Sivaditya Vaidya. He sent across, he's from West Bengal somewhere. So his question to all of you, one of you can actually answer. Some of the companies have donated to the PM CARES Fund, which also was the last question, and donations has been made eligible under CSR. And then companies on the other hand lay off employees. So what is it? Is it that companies are using CSR as a proxy to do bad things? Or is it not that the law is responsible for defeating the purpose of responsible business? I think a beautiful question. So any of you can take this question.
Can I tell from industry side?
Yes, please, sir.
See, the layoff is a part of natural process of industry, and they have to look long term. And the whole focus is that unless they keep on, say, generating profit for the society, the company will will have to wind up. So let us not link to let us not be emotional about this thing. That is every company now is badly affected. And they are planning their long-term survival right now. And trust me, nobody enjoys retrenching people. It's a very painful process. If companies are doing that, they must be having a very valid reason. And CSR is something different. That is in fact, the companies who are doing very good work in CSR, they are also forced to retrench some of the workers. For obvious reasons. Some of the activities which are not really required now, they are winding up. That's a normal natural process of the growth of industry.
Saurabh, would you like to say something on this?
I missed the first part of your question, Sudhir.
No, I repeat, so some of the companies have donated to the PM CARES Fund and the donation has been made eligible under CSR. And then companies on the other hand lay off employees. So what is it? Is it that companies are using CSR as a proxy to do bad things? Is it not that the law is responsible for defeating the purpose of responsible business? Hello? Saurabh, could you hear me? Acha. So Saurabh is perhaps another.
No,
our system is hanging. Binoyji?
Yeah, I agree with Tiwari sir. Layoff and PM CARE funds or CSR two different things.
Okay.
Why laid off, we want to analyze differently.
Okay.
But definitely, the PM CARE fund, suddenly it came. And why one has to use the CSR fund to give that? That is the government. Government is basically arm twisting the culprits. They don't have any option but to do it. So this is unfortunate thing. I can only say that.
So I just take last one question, which has come from Mr. Ganga Kumar. He is an IS himself, and asking this question to Mr. Tiwari: why government can't take this as blessing in disguise to create economic prosperity and self-sustainable mode for India with special reference to Bimaru states, so that sustainable growth in GDP could happen?
In fact, if you look at my approach, I'm
Yes.
not talking about ye kharab ho gaya, ye acha ho gaya. I'm trying to look at what opportunities it is giving us to improve our various identified deficiencies or weaknesses further. So yes, in fact, I am one person who treat wherever I have worked that every problem is an opportunity to do something better, and very often we have succeeded doing that thing. So it's obviously an opportunity. I agree completely.
Okay. So I just conclude here, because so time is up now, and there are many questions which people have asked. So I'm so sorry to accommodate your questions, but definitely we'll try to send back our responses through emails if you can provide us your emails. Before I conclude, I wanted to say something. So Shivanji, just a sec.
Sir.
I'm not. Yeah, just a sec. In fact, I'm trying to show my last slide. Anyway, so I'm not able to actually handle this thing. So sorry. Lastly, I just want to conclude this session by saying that new CSR, or say quality CSR, is going to demand 8 hours. This is my thing which I'm going to share with you. And what these 8 hours are, I'm simply reading it out. Relook at the business vision, and it has to be more humane. Second, revisit the policies and guidelines and take actions accordingly. Third, rearrange your priorities. Fourth, redefine the role of CSR. Fifth, reset the social goals for achieving economic goals, realign them internally as well as externally, and then redesign the organizational structure for meeting these goals. And seventh one is recalibrate operational strategies, followed by the eighth one is redirect your valuable resources. So what I mean to say that everything is going to be prefixed by re, everything you have to start with re. So I stop here because time is over. So I simply request Shivanji to propose word of thanks. And thank you very much from my side for remaining with us.
Thank you.
I thank all the dignitaries present with us today. Thank you for taking out the time. I am sure the listeners, the participants to this discussion have benefited immensely from your keen insights and from your vast experience. Thank you, Professor Sinha, for hosting this webinar for us. Thank you from all of us at IRMA and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again to everyone.